In the vast and intricate landscape of the human psyche, few figures have contributed as profoundly as Carl Jung. A pioneer of analytical psychology, Jung uncovered deep truths about the nature of the self, the shadow, and how people wear masks, personas, to navigate the world. But one of his most chilling observations relates to a dangerous psychological dynamic. What happens when a narcissist realizes they can no longer manipulate you? The answer is not just disturbing, it's transformative. It unveils a path of liberation, resilience, and psychological sovereignty for anyone who has suffered under the spell of narcissistic abuse. Understanding Jung's insights can quite literally save your emotional and psychological life. The narcissist and the shadow. A volatile relationship. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the shadow as the dark, unconscious part of ourselves, traits, urges, and aspects of our personality that we reject or deny. For the average person, the shadow is a source of hidden truths and growth potential. But for the narcissist, it becomes a monstrous force they cannot acknowledge, so they project it onto others. This projection means that narcissists attribute their own flaws, fears, and darkness to those around them. According to Jung, this is a form of psychological disownment. And when someone resists this projection, when you see through the narcissist's mask and don't play along, you become something terrifying to them. A threat. The persona isn't just a mask. It is the narcissist. Jung described the persona as the social face we show the world. For healthy individuals, it's a flexible mask, a way to engage with different contexts. But for the narcissist, the persona isn't just a tool, it becomes their entire identity. This is where danger brews. When someone, especially someone close, exposes the cracks in their persona, the narcissist's whole psychological system begins to collapse. Jung described this as a psychological crisis. Their inflated ego, built on delusions of superiority and deep-seated shame, is unable to withstand the blow. What follows is a psychological war, launched not just to defend the self-image, but to destroy the person who dared to expose it. You. The 3 phases of narcissistic breakdown. 1. The testing phase. In this phase, the narcissist probes your boundaries. They study your emotional landscape like a predator stalking prey, identifying your triggers, vulnerabilities, and weak points. Jung called this psychological reconnaissance. If you resist their manipulation, you've marked yourself as a danger. You're no longer seen as a source of narcissistic supply, but as an adversary. 2. The escalation phase. When their typical manipulation tactics fail, narcissists escalate. They launch psychological warfare using gaslighting, projection, triangulation, and emotional volatility. Jung referred to this overcompensation as compensatory behavior. At this stage, they may enlist others, flying monkeys, to unknowingly support their campaign against you. These third parties are often manipulated into believing the narcissist's narrative, further isolating you. 3. The recognition phase. This is the most dangerous stage. Once the narcissist realizes they can't control you, they experience what Jung called narcissistic mortification, a psychological wound that strikes at the heart of their identity. The pain is so deep, it threatens their entire sense of self. At this point, they deploy their most insidious weapon, psychological inversion. Psychological inversion, the final trick. Psychological inversion is the act of flipping reality. The narcissist casts themselves as the victim, and you, the one who resisted, as the villain. Jung called this shadow projection on steroids. They manipulate the collective unconscious, a shared layer of human psychology Jung described as filled with archetypes and universal themes. Narcissists instinctively position themselves as the archetypal wounded soul, while you become the heartless monster. This trick is devastatingly effective because it taps into our empathy. People around you may start to believe the narcissist's story. Your reality begins to dissolve. You question your memory, your motives, your sanity. This is not mere manipulation. Jung called it psychological terrorism, the smear campaign, social sabotage. To solidify their inverted narrative, narcissists begin a smear campaign. Jung discovered that this isn't a spontaneous reaction. It's a strategic psychological operation. Narcissists isolate you by poisoning your reputation among friends, family, and colleagues. They use a tactic called truth sandwiching, mixing lies with facts to make their narrative more believable. The human brain is wired to accept information bundled with truth. This causes people to internalize distortions without realizing it. Jung noted that this tactic causes profound cognitive dissonance. You feel helpless, trapped in a reality where everyone seems to believe the narcissist's version of events. Projection and character assassination. Jung's most unsettling observation was that narcissists project their own traits onto you. If they are abusive, they accuse you of abuse. If they are manipulative, they claim you are the manipulator. This creates a confusing psychological mirror where nothing makes sense. According to Jung, this projection exploits a powerful bias: confirmation bias amplification. Once a seed of doubt is planted, people begin to unconsciously look for evidence to confirm it. And they don't stop at actions. They attack your core identity. Narcissists reframe your strengths as flaws. Independence becomes selfishness. Confidence becomes arrogance. Compassion becomes weakness. Jung called this systematic character destruction, and he noted that it often leads to deep psychological wounds and long-term trauma. Emotional terrorism and trauma bonding. Carl Jung used the term emotional terrorism to describe the final stage of narcissistic manipulation. The goal is not just to hurt you, it's to break your will. The narcissist weaponizes the intimate knowledge they gained during the relationship. They exploit your deepest wounds, your past traumas, your secret fears. They apply psychological pressure until you reach your breaking point. This leads to a phenomenon known today as trauma bonding. Alternating between pain and fleeting moments of relief, your brain begins to associate the narcissist with emotional survival. You become addicted to their validation, even as they destroy you. False urgency and chaos. In the final manipulation tactic, narcissists create false urgency, emergencies, crises, and time-sensitive problems that keep you constantly reacting instead of thinking clearly. Jung noted that this tactic aims to destabilize your internal world. You become so consumed by their chaos that you lose sight of your own needs, values, and boundaries. It becomes nearly impossible to access rational thought. Jung called this psychological state cognitive overload. Your mind becomes so overwhelmed that it simply shuts down. This is how even the most intelligent, self-aware people can fall victim to narcissistic control. The path to freedom. Jung's defense strategy. Despite the darkness of this psychological warfare, Carl Jung offered hope. He believed that the key to surviving and healing from narcissistic manipulation is psychological detachment, the ability to observe without reacting emotionally. This isn't coldness, it's strength. Jung encouraged survivors to practice reality anchoring, keeping journals, voice recordings, and documentation to combat the gaslighting and memory distortion. But perhaps most importantly, Jung believed in shadow integration, the conscious process of accepting and embracing our painful experiences without being defined by them. By doing this, you reclaim your authentic self, the version of you that existed before the narcissistic abuse distorted your identity. The most powerful truth: you have always had the power. Carl Jung's final revelation is both simple and profound. The narcissist's power comes entirely from your psychological participation. Their manipulation, control, and domination only work when you engage with their distorted reality. The moment you stop playing, the illusion begins to crumble. When you see the narcissist not as a terrifying figure, but as a deeply wounded individual acting out of fear, shame, and insecurity, you take away their power. You no longer fear their attacks. You no longer believe their lies. You begin to reclaim your psychological sovereignty. Conclusion: reclaiming your inner authority. Carl Jung's insights into narcissism and manipulation offer a lifeline for those caught in toxic psychological dynamics. By understanding the narcissist's playbook, from projection and gaslighting to emotional terrorism and character assassination, you gain the clarity needed to protect yourself. But more than that, you awaken to the truth that your strength lies in self-awareness. That once you detach from their reality and embrace your own, you begin to live not in reaction to manipulation, but in alignment with your authentic self. This is the true path to psychological freedom.